welcome to today's webinar. We will get started right now. We are going to get started with Rochelle Carpenter. She's going to be our moderator. She is our Manager of Health and Transportation Programs here at T4 America. Rochelle?
Thank you, Alicia. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are truly excited to share information with you about how several metropolitan planning organizations are finding innovative ways to fund walking and bicycling projects in their regions. Each of the MPOs that you are going to hear from today is featured in a paper that Transportation for America and the American Public Health Association are releasing today that describes how metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs, across the country are funding more and better quality bicycling and walking projects. After the webinar, you will receive a link to download this paper from Transportation for America's website. So MPOs, the reason we are here today is to share that they are funding more and more bicycling and pedestrian projects because residents are demanding safer and more convenient ways to walk and bicycle. Walking or bicycling for transportation is proven to help people live healthier lives with less risk for chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, or certain forms of cancer. And it's our privilege to acknowledge that the paper today, released today, and this webinar is supported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention because of these great health benefits that active transportation projects provide. There's also a number of economic benefits that active transportation projects provide. Places with complete streets where people can safely and easily walk, bicycle, or use public transportation are also better for local businesses and local economies. And I encourage you to check out a report, if you haven't done so, by the National Complete Streets Coalition called Safer Streets, Stronger Economies, which has found some of these results. Just as a short preview, streets that were retrofitted as complete streets yielded a growth in the number of jobs and new businesses on those streets. And that report, Safer Streets, Stronger Economies, has a number of profiles and evidence to show those economic benefits. Again, I encourage you to check out that report as well. Also, as low-cost forms of transportation, walking and bicycling are very important to people with low incomes and other underserved population. So it's imperative that we find ways to really provide these options for people. So we have chosen to feature the regional transportation agencies that are metropolitan planning organizations in our policy paper and on today's webinar because they are critical to providing more walking and bicycling infrastructure in our cities. MPOs bring together local leaders who make major decisions about transportation. They establish policies that will determine how funding will be spent in their regions, and they are gatekeepers of billions of dollars in transportation funding. So crucial partners in the development of active transportation projects. So today, I am delighted to be joined by staff from 7 MPOs that have adopted policies or founded programs or developed plans that have led to an increase in funding for bicycling and walking projects, or an improvement to the kinds of bicycling and walking projects that are funded in their regions. So we are going to hear from staff from MPOs that represent the metropolitan areas surrounding Seattle, Phoenix, Atlanta, San Diego, Madison, Philadelphia, and Columbus. As you hear from each of these speakers, feel free to ask questions to us by typing them in the chat box in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Also, just to note, we are recording this webinar and it will be available on Transportation for America's website after today. So first up, we have Kimberly Scrivener from the Puget Sound Regional Council in the Seattle region. Kim is going to tell us about funding her agency specifically dedicates for bicycling and walking projects. Kimberly?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. In the Puget Sound region, we are a very large metropolitan region surrounding the Seattle area. We include 4 counties, or pretty large counties. And since 1993, we've been allocating 10% of all of our FHWA, that's the STTC Max funds, for walking and bicycling investments. In our region, we take 10% off the top, and then the rest of, along with some other set-asides, and then we split 50% goes into a regional pot and 50% gets distributed to each of our 4 counties. And that 10% of the bicycle and pedestrian investments gets included in that distribution to the counties. So when we try to improve this program over time, what we've been doing is working with our countywide groups to improve that process. My next slide talks a little bit about how it gives you a sense of the flavor of the projects we fund, both through as standalone bicycle and pedestrian projects. But what we've also seen is that roadway projects are increasingly seeing a lot more multimodal elements, and particularly bicycle and pedestrian elements. Because we work with our countywide groups, we've been slowly improving our process over time, both with our regional pot and with working with the county competition. With our regional program, we continue to fund bicycle and pedestrian investments above and beyond that 10%. In our last competition, we funded at least 2 major regional trail projects. And then in our last cycle, we have adopted an active transportation plan, and that gave us a lot more standing in terms of going out to the countywide groups and making recommendations about what that plan says about bicycle and pedestrian safety and recommendations. And so our countywide committees are supposed to be consistent with our regional plans, which can be very broad, and so they do have a lot of flexibility. So we've been working with them over time. The first cycle, we were able to go out and say, we have an active transportation plan now. Here's what it says. We offered suggested application questions for their applications. We created a resource guide that points to best practice documents, but it was an easy lookup. Everybody liked it when we added a lot of pictures. And then the other things that we've been doing, and I really want to emphasize the importance of this, is really getting out into the region and doing a lot more education. So we've been conducting education and outreach workshops in each county. We've been conducting tours with our Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee every August. And that, in addition to the resources, we've been seeing an improvement of the types of projects that we've been seeing submitted to competitions. And so that's really the next focus. We're seeing an increase in bicycle and pedestrian investments and within multimodal projects. And our next step is to really emphasize the importance of safety. And in our last competition, we did tend to see more separated facilities. And I think it has a lot to do with our outreach and education and recommendations. So I really encourage you to get creative and really get out there and work with your jurisdictions. You can have a lot of really great programs, but we really want to see people submitting good projects, and so that's really been a fun and exciting aspect of this program. And my last slide has questions. I think we're going to wait till the end for that. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Kimberly. So, of course, with that dedicated program at the Puget Sound Regional Council, they can fund projects like Safe Routes to Schools in order to help school children walk and bicycle to school from their homes. Next up, we are going to hear Margaret Boone with the Maricopa Association of Governments, who is going to describe the efforts of her agency to improve the Safe Routes to Schools projects that are funded in the Phoenix region through some really innovative planning. So Margaret?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Margaret Boone, as she mentioned, and I joined MAG in December of 2012 as an ITS and safety engineer. One of my responsibilities at MAG is to develop and administer programming for the non-infrastructure Transportation Alternatives Program Safe Routes to School funds. and this is done with oversight from the region's Transportation Safety Committee. I'm pleased to provide a brief overview for you all today of the MAG programming priorities, some specific examples of how these priorities have actually resulted in increased Safe Routes to School programs and projects, as well as hopefully provide some helpful information to you from our lessons learned. It looks like you've already advanced to the next slide, so I'll continue. MAG stands for Maricopa Association of Governments, which is, as she mentioned, the Phoenix Metropolitan Region. It incorporates Maricopa County, all of Maricopa County, as well as parts of Pinal County. So that includes 29 cities and towns, as well as 3 tribal communities. So that's a little over 4 million people. One of the things that we really pride ourselves here at MAG is the very good structure of technical committees, which provide oversight to programming those projects. So 2 different committees provide oversight for recommending Safe Routes to School projects, and those are the Safety Committee for oversight of the non-infrastructure Safe Routes to School, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee that provides oversight for infrastructure projects. So as an example, the Safety Committee identify project priorities for those that would identify specific barriers to walking and biking that would be unique to each school or a group of schools. And so they set aside for what they call Priority 1 Safe Routes to School studies. One key deliverable of the studies is the development of walking and biking route maps as an education component for the parents. The scope of the studies also depends very heavily on establishing and fostering partnerships. The non-infrastructure set aside also provides funding for material support for existing or new projects, and that encourage more and safer walking and biking to K-8 schools. Next slide, please. So in order to gauge constituent needs and priorities for TAP funding, a survey was opened up to members of the various technical committees I mentioned earlier. Based on those survey results, the goal was identified to fund projects directly affecting K-8 schools at 30%. So with all the different funding sources, the TAP also, obviously funds bike and ped projects, but the goal of 30% was specifically for K-8 schools. So the amount allocated to the MAG region is $4.4 million. $4 million of that was set aside for infrastructure projects or those requiring construction, as well as acquisition of some right-of-way. And this would be for enhancing pedestrian crossings and projects of the like. So the remaining $400,000 was set aside for non-infrastructure projects or projects that would provide consultant services for conducting Safe Routes to School framework studies, as well as material support for new or existing Safe Routes to School programs. So as you all are probably very familiar with any new programming that includes new regional goals, priorities, and project criteria, things started out a little bit slow. And as you can see, one of the first rounds, the goal, the portion that was funded that was directed specifically to K schools was about 6%, and has increased since then. So I also want to note that the first round for programming transportation alternatives was for 2015 through 2017. In our most recent programming that we just finished up, it included $1.2 million, and this is for the non-infrastructure, is what I'm talking about now, for fiscal year 18 through 20. And we received 13 applications from 7 local agencies, and they affect 44 schools each program year. So something new for the 2008 projects that have just been programmed, we're going to be opening up our work program to provide MAG on-call consultant services to conduct the Safe Routes to School studies. We received quite a bit of feedback from our local agencies regarding this, and they had actually requested that we look into being able to do that, and it would make it a lot easier for them. So that's why we're moving forward with that new element to the program. Next slide, please. So some of the biggest takeaways for us was really the separation of the 2 program types as a key to prioritizing funding where needed. The poll conducted really did help identify regional needs and priorities. And then we went back after the first cycle, and it was very helpful to further refine the program and fit the needs of the region. Another thing we did was do a major overhaul of the application. We simplified it towards defining safe routes to school elements. So instead of asking in the application what successful safe routes to school strategies are included in your project, we simplified by providing drop-down boxes filled with known successful safe routes to school strategies and allow space for unique strategies that they may have developed. So this way the applicant was both educated and guided as to what successful safe routes to school strategies are. The other was to assist with problem identification and project development. So focus application questions on identifying specific barriers to be addressed so they can tailor their project to reducing or eliminating more barriers. We use meaningful and easily understood evaluation criteria to simplify the evaluation process, and we made it clear to the applicant what was being evaluated and why. So finally, I just can't stress enough the importance of promoting partnerships as an underlying theme for our successful Safe Routes to School program. Next slide, please. So with that concludes my portion of the presentation for the MAG region. Please feel free to contact me at the email provided below. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. I think it's an important case study in how to work with your MPO to plan for better Safe Routes to Schools projects that are being funded in our region. So thanks a lot. Next up, we have Amy Goodwin with the Atlanta Regional Commission and, of course, the Atlanta metropolitan area. She's going to tell us about the Livable Communities Initiative program that has supported walkable communities across the large region of Atlanta. Amy?
Hi. You can advance. Hi, I'm Amy Goodwin from the Atlanta Regional Commission. ARC created its Livable Centers Initiative, or LCI program, in 1999 with the original purpose of creating mixed-use centers to facilitate multimodal travel options, reduce single-occupancy vehicle trips, or SOV trips, and improve air quality. Nowadays, its mission is broadened to create walkable centers and corridors that are accessible to people of all ages and incomes through a variety of strategies, including capitalizing on underutilized roadway or transit infrastructure, gray field redevelopment, historic preservation, expanding street connectivity, improving jobs and housing balance, and affordable housing options. You can go to the next slide, please. The program is designed to provide a framework for creating livable centers, and it funds plans and infrastructure projects, as well as providing technical assistance to local governments and non-governmental organizational partners, typically like CIDs or BIDs, Community or Business Improvement District organizations. The LCI plans are sub-area master plans that link transportation investments with development and land use. There are also additional study funds grantees can apply for and receive to help them implement those plans, for instance, developing new zoning codes, street design standards, parking studies, project feasibility studies, and a number of other things that help them implement their initial sort of LCI master plan. One of the more unique features of LCI is how it ties land use implementation actions to the receipt of federal funding for transportation projects. The community's performance on plan implementation is built into the evaluation criteria for transportation project applications. So while as a regional commission and an MPO that ARC is, we cannot regulate land use directly, but access to $500 million worth of federal transportation funding can provide a powerful incentive to these communities to adopt the policies, programs, and regulations that they've recommended in their plans, instead of just keeping it on the shelf. So yeah, and you can see since 2000, we've spent $1 million a year on studies, and we have a commitment for $500 million for projects through the year 2040. We've spent about $200 million of that so far. You can advance to the next slide, please. So some LCI studies and projects focus, they they pretty much all focus on improving bicycle and pedestrian access and safety. A few examples of such studies include a regional trail network plan for the Aerotropolis area. This is kind of our airport investment area on the south side of the region. Development of a crowdsourcing app used in the City of Atlanta's bike plan called Cycle Atlanta. Bike to share feasibility studies, and we've done quite a few sort of concept development studies for a complete streets or trail project. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So then, since 2003, we started funding transportation projects that were recommended in the plans that have been developed. So right now we have about 105 or so of these LCI plans, and that have all recommended different projects and other land use and economic development strategies. So we have since 2003 we've funded 112 construction projects so far coming out of those plans, totaling $202 million. About 90 of those projects are complete, with the remainder are in the permitting process or under construction. The projects have been getting more and more innovative and transformative over the years. At first, we did a lot of sidewalk and beautification projects, but now we are doing just kind of more robust kind of complete streets type projects like this example here, Juniper Street in Midtown Atlanta. We are road dieting the street from 4 lanes down to 2, adding on-street parking, a cycle track with a physical barrier separated, which is actually green infrastructure, drainage features, and sidewalk and crossing upgrades as well. And now, last slide, please. So the last thing I'll add is a couple of our more important lessons learned over the years. At first it was, I think the first one is to really not underestimate the value and impact of investing in land use, zoning, and policy changes. These can be far more effective in transforming a place into a walkable community than a single $1 million sidewalk project. And yet it seems like it's that money that most of the local government staff and elected officials that we deal with anyway are focused on. So we have many examples where a city did an LCI plan and they basically just handed it to a developer and they built it almost to spec. We've also, more often than not, is the case where we developed the plan and then we've provided the community with follow-up funds to develop a form-based code or a special purpose zoning district or other regulatory codes and whatnot and regulations, which have resulted in more connected streets and bike and ped facilities than we could have done with a single project. And lastly, I would say our greatest champions by far have been mayors, and then followed by city council people. And I think we really need to leverage that, especially since many state DOTs are not necessarily highly supportive of spending the STBG, the Surface Transportation Program money, or CMAQ funds on these types of projects. So building that local support is really important. And I think in our region, cities feel as much ownership and pride over this LCI program as ARC does. And that's important to make sure that that the program and the funding remains a cornerstone of our regional plan and our TIPs, our transportation improvement programs that we develop every few years. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. That's a great overview of your program, and kudos on the distinct lessons learned. It's great to have developed these comprehensive plans that really have gotten a lot of buy-in among people in your regions. And as you say, that's all very important, also tying in with the land use and codes, more effective than single sidewalk projects. So very good points. So the examples we just heard from the Seattle, Phoenix, and Atlanta regions give us some ideas about how to direct funding for bicycling and walking projects. So thanks to the three of you for providing your overviews. Next up, we are going to hear about how 2 metropolitan regions have done planning to improve the kinds of walking or bicycling projects that are funded in their regions. First, we'll hear from Chris Cluth from the San Diego Association of Governments, who will tell us about planning efforts that have prioritized bicycling projects in the San Diego region. Chris?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for inviting us to speak with the rest of the MPOs today. I'm Chris Cluth from Sandag. I'm going to just give a brief overview of the different kinds of projects we have in our overall active transportation program, and then talk about one of the things that is a little more different and a little more unique to how we're actually implementing projects ourselves. So I'll go into a little bit more about that as we go on. Next slide, please. So we have a whole bunch of different types of programs and activities. We have a Regional Active Transportation Working Group. We have a local grants program for active transportation and Smart Growth Incentive Program. That's a competitive grant program where we distribute money to our local jurisdictions. In our last regional plan, we integrated a safe route to transit strategy, really trying to kind of capitalize, no pun intended, on our investments in regional transit. And what the safe routes to transit is giving a kind of a playbook of different types, or the different pedestrian and bike connections that should be included in all regional projects moving forward to make sure we're making the most of our investments in regional transit. And we have a lot of activities in our transportation demand management program as well, with Safe Routes to School. We do another small incentive grant program. Our folks down there do Bike Month activities when we also produce the regional bike map. So just a little quick backup. Sandag oversees the San Diego region, so it overlays with the county of San Diego. And we have a little more than 3 million people, 3.3, 3.4 million people now. So we're trying to get all the jurisdictions to work together on that. Kind of the thing that we're focusing on quite a bit, putting a lot of resources in, is our regional bike plan, which we adopted a few years back, and it was integrated into our regional plan. And if you want to go to the next slide. And so when that was, about a year after that was adopted, we also, our board of directors also adopted our early action program. So what that is in the next 10 years, we've committed to spending $200 million on 42 of our highest priority projects. Makes up about 77 miles of urban bikeway and bike paths. And the funding itself comes from our local regional sales tax. So the active transportation program gets 2% of half-cent sales tax. So that adds up. And the funding strategy behind this is similar to how other large transportation or corridor projects are funded. We can bond against this funding source and bring more of the dollars forward quicker. And in doing so, we have some efficiencies in being able to use that money to leverage state and federal funds. So far we've been able to get an additional about $35 million in outside funding. So we still have a lot of projects that need to be funded. And the other thing is we are actually bringing everything in-house. We are planning, designing, and building these projects. And so right now we have 25 active projects, which is quite a few. in our local jurisdictions, so it's interesting that we don't have land use authority, but we do have agreements with our local jurisdictions to implement regional transportation projects. So it's a little bit of a twist, but some of these projects are pretty large. They're very comprehensive and multi-jurisdictional. So we've found in one case study going a ways back, our Bayshore Bikeway, that we can be a pretty effective agency in working with some of the larger like Coastal Commission and utilities and railroads. So some of the smaller local jurisdictions weren't always as effective as they would have liked to have been, and projects were taking a little bit too long. So we have these projects, and how we're approaching the projects is also we're trying to do them kind of a complete streets types of projects, very comprehensive, integrating as many pedestrian improvements as possible, and then also as the projects are implemented and rolled out, we also try to connect to as many schools and local economic areas so we can integrate education and outreach as we go along. So we're trying to do a comprehensive rollout of the projects as possible. And so that's it in a nutshell what we're doing with our program. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. A great overview of regional efforts to plan for and then prioritize bicycling projects for funding. Thank you. Next up, we will hear from Elena Bernardinello in Madison, Wisconsin, about the Active Living Index. So with the Active Living Index, people can easily see how accessible places like grocery stores, shops, and schools are by walking and bicycling in Madison to help people make decisions about what projects to fund. Elena?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. Our project has been classified in the group of improving data and measuring what matters. And I'm going to share with you this new tool that we designed and launched in 2016 to score and visualize active living places. This particular tool was a result of a grant that we had from APA and CDC called Plan for Health Grant. Next slide, please. So I want to just put it in place. So since we are all planners here, or many of us, we are in Wisconsin. We are in the northern part of the Midwest, and Wisconsin has 72 counties, one of which is Dane County. Dane County is pretty much the scope and the geographic coverage of our project, and we had pretty much 500,000 people. So we are a little bit smaller of the previous example you saw, but we decided to develop this tool to measure our county mainly. And even though the MPO boundary is a little bit smaller, our MPO also functions to support the entire county. Next slide, please. Here we are going to see how our Active Living Index shows when you open up. Is a web-based application. Is street network-based. Is designed as an index to measure three components: walkability, bike system accessibility, and transit system accessibility, and also to score it. And the strength of this tool is the scalability. Our Active Living Index is able to practically measure and report a score, an aggregated score for any other street, neighborhood, municipality within Dane County. We also posted some aggregated data at the municipality level or neighborhood level. Next slide, please. In terms of how we use it for plan and performance measures, you are not going to see completely in the slide because it's supposed to be animated, but what you can see here is how our MPO used it so far. As I say, it's pretty new. And so the way we decided to apply it was for the new regional transportation plan put together by our MPO. They released it in June last year. to assist in prioritizing area for improvement in pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, and also to understand more appropriate transit service frequency. And this priority area were identified to guide the implementation of programs. One other best way to use the active living index for a plan is by including in a plan evaluation as a variable to measure performance across time. And again, our MPO incorporating the active living index that you see in the visual part that you have in front of you right now, in their evaluation for transportation performance measurement report that is required by the federal, and they add it as an additional measure to those that are required to be reported annually. And you see on the bottom that we have a current trend, and we hope to increase it. Actually, it's supposed to be trending next year, but we don't have any previous trend because it's new. But we are going to use it for that purpose. Next slide, please. Another option to use the active living index is for policy or plan of programs. And here is where the city and also the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission work together with our MPO to practically pilot it and introducing this new tool in the community. And we identified three main communities based on the level of urbanicity. The main community in an urban area was a neighborhood in the city of Madison, where the elder was very supportive of the use of the tool to use it as community engagement around neighborhood quality of life. In another area, in a more suburban place, one of the city adjacent to the city of Madison is the city of Pittsburgh, and the mayor used it for their bicycle transportation plan. Another area which was used was a rural area, the village of Cross Plains, in which some grassroots advocacy group during the planning process was able to have walkability to school as a requirement for any new development. So it's really been already very well received. And what I can suggest to other MPO, even they have a larger scope than ours, is as an advice to be creative in the use of your data, since MPOs generally have plenty of data, but also use it in a more multidisciplinary approach in planning for the MPO plans, but also in a way to evaluate our plans. It's a wonderful time now to think about how we evaluate our plan, and data is what we decided to focus on. That's what I have.
Thank you, Milena. Indeed, this is a great example of a way to creatively use data and evaluate plans. Next up, we are going to hear about how to better capture data that our metropolitan planning organizations and partners use. So we're going to hear from Cassidy Bolin about how the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission in the Philadelphia region has developed an impressive system to count bicyclists and pedestrians. And also, just as a reminder to everybody, you can ask us questions at any time by typing them into the chat box on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Cassidy, take us away.
Thanks, Rochelle. I'm going to share with everyone this afternoon DVRPC's efforts to count and document bicycle and pedestrian activity. DVRPC, or the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, is the MPO for the bi-state Philadelphia region, which you can see in this map. That includes 9 counties and about 350 municipalities. Since 2010, DVRPC has taken about 7,000 short-term bicycle or pedestrian counts. This has primarily been done through 3 types of programs. The first is our permanent counters. We have 17 of those, and they are placed on our regional trail network, which is shown in the map. The second type of count program we have is a cyclical program. We have 2 of those. One is our Center City cordon counting, which we do in support of our regional travel model, and those are done in Center City, Philadelphia. We also have our newest program, which is a regional bicycle cyclical count program, which We have now selected about 120 locations across our region, which will be counted on a 3-year cycle, and we've counted about half of those as part of year 1 of that program. And finally, we have project-specific counts, which are done as requested across the region. So this map shows the totality of our counting efforts. The blue dots are bicycle and pedestrian counts, both of them, and the red dots are bicycle-only counts. And all of this data is available on our website via a comprehensive web viewer. So now for an example of how we use this data in a specific application. Next slide, please. This is from a current project. Our study area is on the right side of the map, where you can see we counted 93 bikes. And on the left side of the map is a comparable location where we counted 410 bikes. And we've also here mapped the number of bicycle crashes. So we were able to tell the project sponsor, in this case the City of Philadelphia, that at the project location we have fewer bikes but more crashes compared to a location just to the west on the same street. And that allows us to say that, or at least suggest that the rate of bicycle crashes is higher in this location, and we need to prioritize bicycle safety improvements, which may be more expensive and have more of an impact on vehicle traffic, but really be important based on the data that we have. So that's a specific example of how our data really allows us to say more things about bicycling and walking and bicycle safety and pedestrian safety, and really improve project design and hopefully project outcomes. So I'm happy to answer specific questions about this project or our general counting program.
That's great, Cassidy. Thank you. It's going to be really important for us as regional planning agencies to do better counting of bicycle and pedestrian travelers, and you're really providing a great precedent for us. Last up, we will hear how quality bicycling and walking projects have proliferated in the Columbus region, largely because the MPO, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, requires that their members comply with the MPO's Complete Streets policy, and because of the MPO's robust technical assistance to help jurisdictions design those Complete Streets projects. With us to tell that story is Amelia Costanzo. Amelia?
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I like to think that the reason I'm presenting last is a grand plan by the organizers of today's webinar, because it sounds like everything all the other presenters were talking about are things that MORPC is doing or striving to do, and it all comes together with our active transportation plan. So since 2010, MORPC has had a Complete Streets policy, and we work with local governments in our region to apply that policy to their own work. And one way we incentivize that is by tying the implementation of Complete Streets to the transportation funding that we award across the region. So that has been successful, but we feel like it could be better. And so to help planners and engineers and other local decision makers consider Complete Streets in their plans, we completed this active transportation plan in 2016. So it's a part of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and it is the first time that we ever integrated active transportation planning in such a comprehensive way. So the ATP is a tool for the planners and engineers to use in office or on site. It's available online, and it's in an easy-to-use mobile-friendly format. Next slide, please. Yes, that is me wearing that crosswalk sign. I like to put that picture in where I can. So at the drawing board or on a site visit or at a meeting, planners and engineers can go to morpc.org/ATP and pull up the interactive web map and look at their community or look at a project area through the lens of Complete Streets. So they can ask each other questions such as, where are people going? How are they getting there? Are there a lot of crashes in this area? What about crosswalks? Are pieces of sidewalks missing? Do neighborhood plans in neighboring jurisdictions address the same sort of issues? Can we partner together? And what about the types of people that live in this area? Do they have access to affordable transportation options and whatnot? The picture at the top left, where's our sidewalk, is a great example of a local issue that we have in the Central Ohio area where there's a jurisdictional boundary, there are different types of property owners, and there's a lot of people living in an area and a lot of people that get around by foot, but there aren't necessarily sidewalks that connect them. And so in some cases, the citizens take it upon themselves to push local decision makers to get sidewalks in place. But as MORPC's role, we're hoping that we can help those local decision makers fix the problems before it becomes something that the residents are bringing up. Next slide, please. So when you get this presentation sent to you after the webinar, you'll be able to see wholly what I was trying to show here in this animated slide. My joke is now given away. But another component of the ATP is the cost estimator tool. So you can find it on the ATP webpage. You click it and you'll be prompted to download an Excel file, and you can save that to your desktop, and then you can play with it. The data that was used to create this Excel spreadsheet and tool is based on local bid data, Ohio Department of Transportation construction costs, and things like that, but you can actually unprotect the file without a password, and you could go into the back of it and actually add in your own bid estimates. So this applies to any area across the United States. So the idea is that planners and engineers can spend a little bit of time filling in certain information about adding an active transportation project, such as a sidewalk, a multi-use path, or a bike lane to an already planned transportation project, like a road widening or a bridge replacement. And then the Excel file considers a bunch of different factors and then spits out a range of additional costs to add that type of active transportation facility to the project. So it doesn't consider right-of-way acquisition or utility relocation because those are assumed to be built into the already planned general transportation project, but it does allow planners and engineers to take that information to their decision-making bodies and say, you know, we're widening this road. It'll add 5% to the total cost for us to add a bike lane. Is that something feasible? As opposed to what the local decision makers or even the planners and engineers may have assumed to be a 40% increase in cost, they can then use this to start that conversation about whether it might be feasible for them to budget in a little bit more money, do a little bit more design work, and then end up with a more complete street in the end. So we had some of our local communities try this, and guess what? It worked. So this was very exciting to us, and that's where this little meme comes into play, where you know, this kind of stuff can be really, really useful, and it can be really exciting and fun to use. And so we hope to deploy it more wholly across our region and have more of our planners and engineers try it and see if it does continue to be accurate. And then in that way we can then encourage other planners and engineers who don't normally think about complete streets as much to use this and get those projects built. So that's all I have. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Amelia. And is the cost calculator tool available to anybody? Can anybody on this webinar pick it up?
Yep. You just go to that morpca.org/ATP, and then there is a button that says Cost Estimator Tool.
Great. Yeah, I think that'll be a great tool for people. So just to wrap up, there's a few common themes throughout all of the profiles that are featured in our policy paper that you can download after this webinar, and in the speakers programs that you heard from today. First, you know, MPOs are making this work because they are making their plans and programs and policies work for all of their member jurisdictions or across different geographic areas in their metropolitan regions. So for example, MORPC and the Columbus region really worked very closely with rural elected officials and residents to help figure out what kinds of complete streets retrofits could be done in rural areas, or the Livable Centers Initiative in Atlanta made sure that that program could fund jurisdictions in each of their counties. So it's important to develop programs that work across your metropolitan region. It's also really important to be comprehensive in what you're doing and provide a full suite of resources to help successfully implement what it is that you're trying to do. And third, we've seen today that these are innovative ideas, and they require being bold, having leadership, and all of those things, of course, come with time. So just remember that this isn't going to happen tomorrow. It's okay to start small if you have to. In a lot of ways, it's a lot better to start small and build from there, and recognize that these things do take some time. Alicia, do we have questions from our audience for any of our panelists today?
We do have several. We actually have quite a bit of questions. We will, because of time, we'll go ahead and answer a few, and then for the ones that we aren't able to answer via phone, we'll go ahead and answer via email. The first question is for Chris, and the question is, can you please explain the difference between the bikeways, Class 1 versus high priority in other regional corridors?
Sure. The purple lines, the Class 1s, are bike paths, so multi-use paths. We have 4 major ones around the region that we're already well underway with. And then the orange lines, the urban projects, or the high-priority urban projects, are on roadway projects, so separated bikeways, bike boulevards, and those are like really through our most dense urban areas. I think that covered it. Pretty straightforward, I think.
Perfect, thank you. I do have a question, and this one I think it's directed to all of them. A lot of people are curious in terms of funding, where where the funding comes for the different projects you guys all discussed. And this one can be for anyone.
This is Amy from Atlanta Regional Commission. Our LCI program is primarily funded with the Federal Surface Transportation Block Grant money, formerly known as Surface Transportation Program money. We have used some TAP money as well, the Transportation Alternatives, so all federal funds that require a 20% local match.
This is Cassidy from DVRPC. Most of our counting programs are funded through our work programs. So we have quite a large counting group. We partner or do counts for many of our MPOs. So we've really built our capacity, for our DOTs. So we've built capacity both in staff, equipment, and money through doing traffic counts, traditional traffic counts, and then we've been able to pivot a little bit to use some of that money or additional work program money to also do our bicycle and pedestrian counts.
This is Chris again from Sandag. We're what they refer to as a self-help region, so about half of our funding for our MPO overall comes from a local sales tax, and the rest is from other state and federal funds.
This is Margaret Boone from MAG. Similarly to the first speaker, a lot of our funding comes from the Transportation Alternatives Program for the infrastructure and the non-infrastructure. Some of the infrastructure, bicycle and pedestrian projects also are funded through CMAQ funding. There has also been an overhaul in priorities for all project types to include bicycle and pedestrian considerations, and so therefore some of our even ITS, Intelligent Transportation Systems, CMAQ funding goes towards things like bicycle counts, bicycle priority at signalized intersections and the such.
Thank you, everyone. I do have another question for all the speakers, and the question is, could you speak to efforts or recommended strategies to avoid or mitigate effects of gentrification?
This is Amelia. So a part of the active transportation plans, the interactive web map, which is not something I was able to even get into, is displaying a lot of different types of data, and some of that data is environmental justice related. And so where it doesn't directly get to the point of your question, it absolutely provides a really easy format for people to get information on households without vehicles or minority populations, and to have that be a part of a conversation and to be able to get census-related data and other types of data right there at their fingertips.
This is Amy from Atlanta. We, it's not something we claim to have solved at all, but we have been trying to encourage or incorporate like affordable housing as much as possible in these plans, and use that as a criteria for award of our transportation funds for project funds, whether or not they have a inclusionary housing policy, or if the project serves like a low-income or public housing development, or some other equity criteria that we've developed. We have some indexes and other things that we use. But it is definitely an ongoing challenge, and is the subject of many of the workshops and public meetings and so forth that are discussed during the plan development of many of these studies.
Thank you. I think that's it in terms of questions. We do want to be respectful of people's time, so Rochelle, I'll go ahead and pass it on to you.
All right. Well, thank you all so much, both for joining the webinar today, and to our 7 speakers for providing that very comprehensive, even though you had a short amount of time, and I want to congratulate all of you for sticking to your time allotment and giving us a lot of information in the brief minutes you had. So again, after this, you will receive a link to get our paper where you can learn about the work of these MPOs and many, many more. I think we have more than 30 profiles of MPOs that have worked to increase or improve their bicycling and walking projects, and we'll have this recording available online. We are at the end of the hour, so thank you all so much for joining, and we will be in touch soon.